1 week season.
Hey, and welcome in OWS fam. So glad you are with us. We are back in the DFS lab. It is Friday, October 11th, and less than 48, actually 50 hours away, I guess, from when this slate kicks off. We are here talking about week 6, and as always, the purpose of this show, build a DraftKings lineup, use that as a vehicle to talk through the slate. A couple of housekeeping items. Just make sure to check the banners down below. A couple of promotions going on at 1 week season. Of course, this show is brought to you by 1 week season, so you can see the deals on the banners scrolling below the bottom of the frame there. I'm your host, Cheeseman, and I'm joined now by Papy. And Papy, welcome to Friday, man. Friday, it's last day of the work week for most people, and so we're just about ready to really jump into the deep research. But first of all, how was week 5 for you?
Great. Big week for me. Best week of the year by far. Was well into the 5-figure win week for me. I talked about Chase and Burrow on this podcast last week, and I went hard on Chase, Burrow, and Higgins. I had that stack on my main lineup that I play across basically every single and 3-entry max contest on DK, and scored 208 on that lineup, and so it was a very nice week in DFS. And then I also felt really strongly about Chase and Burrow last week, and so I bet their props all the way up. Burrow over 300, Chase over 120, and then even parlayed those a little bit. And so, real nice week for me in the betting world too. So it was a real big week here. Really happy with week 5's results.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah, I mean that was, and you even said that. You said it on the show last week that you were going to be going heavy on these guys. You can go back and watch the show. I'll link it in the top right corner if you want to take a look at it, because these shows, a lot of times they are week specific, or they always are week specific, but you can still pick up really good process and strategy tips by watching the shows. So check that out. But that's awesome, man. When you go heavy, you want the weeks where you're right to be weeks where you truly cash it in, and so that's fantastic, man. Good work.
Yeah, man, just like poker, you got to win when you have it, and if you feel really strongly, you got to get your wins when you're right, because you're not going to be right every week.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good week for me too. It was a good week, I think, overall at 1 week season. A lot of people did well. We certainly had some 1 week season banners flying at the top of the different DraftKings, FanDuel, the different contests. So overall, definitely a good week. So cool, dude. Now let's kind of start looking at week 6 here. We talked a little bit before we came on, but before we get into ownership, which we always do on this Friday show, what are the main injury situations at this time that we need to pay attention to? I know there's a couple that we mentioned.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting ones out there. There's some that are like, Bijan Robinson is technically questionable, but I think he's going to play. So, that one's not as big of a deal. But the one I think is impactful is the Colts receivers. Pittman is, I think, already doubtful, and Downs didn't practice yesterday and is looking legitimately questionable, maybe even on the wrong side of questionable. And that's going to, open up some value, even though Pierce is priced way up. Mitchell is still pretty cheap. So that could open up some value there. And then the whole Saints quarterback situation, is Taysom Hill going to play? He looks legitimately questionable. I think he has fractured ribs from week 4. But he's, people play through that sometimes, although I will say that's a pretty significant injury. Like, even if he plays through that, I mean, if you've ever had cracked ribs before, you can't breathe. So, that's a tough injury. It does limit you. But if he plays, how much will they use him at QB? Will he be the goal line QB? There's a lot of kind of up in the air there about Hill and the Saints quarterback situation. So, I think that those are probably 2 pretty significant injury spots that you have to monitor.
Sorry. Yes, definitely. And we'll see kind of the effects of the Saints quarterback situation when we look at ownership here in just a second. The other one that I'll add is Brian Robinson Jr. for the Commanders is questionable. So if he doesn't end up playing, Austin Eckler would probably get, definitely more of the backfield work than he'd be expected to if they both played. And he's 5,800 on DraftKings. So certainly something to look at there. Okay, so let's jump now. Anything else you want to hit, or are we good on injuries?
I think those are the big ones. There's always injury stuff that are a little more minor, but I think those are like the key, decision point injuries.
Yeah, we've had stuff like, I remember a couple weeks ago, we built a lineup that featured the Niners and included George Kittle. And then like a couple hours after we were done, Kittle was announced as he wasn't going to play, basically. So stuff will break. So obviously always kind of stay tuned into what's happening. So with that, let's take a look at ownership here. And here's this is actually the quarterback. Where do you want to go first on ownership? You want to look at the full ownership or look at a specific position?
So I usually like to start with quarterback ownership because I think quarterback in the game stack that you play dictates your lineup the most. And this is an interesting one for me because we see Rattler all the way up there predicted to be chalk. And if you scroll down, the Buccaneers defense is also predicted to be chalk. So it's not very often that you see a quarterback and an opposing defense both predicted to be chalk. So someone's probably going to be wrong. And I get it because the Buccaneers defense is obvious. They're starting quarterbacks out and they're priced at 2,600. But, Rattler at 4K, again, I get it. He's 4K, it'll be hard to totally fade him at 4K, but would it really be that shocking if he has under 10 points? Like, I don't think it would be that shocking if he's just not very good. So a little bit worried about playing him heavily, although tough to have no exposure to him at that price. But I think the thing that really stands out to me here is Dak Prescott being under 10%. I mean, that screams to me like Joe Burrow under 10% last week. Like, really? It's the highest total game. He's in a matchup against a pass funnel. We know that Dallas wants to pass anyway, especially at home. I kind of feel similarly about how I felt about Burrow with Dak, that like he has a really good chance in my mind to throw for 300 yards. And so it's a little surprising to see his ownership that low. I kind of thought him and Lamar and would be the chalk of the week at QB with Daniels right behind him. And, right now it doesn't quite look that way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I noticed that as well too. And yeah, I mean, I just think that Dak at home, do you just think that people are like feeling doubts about this Dallas offense, or is it just more the 4K quarterback? I mean, I figured that Dak would be higher owned than Jalen Hurts, who has a pretty tough matchup at home. And that's an offense that I talked with Stat ATL yesterday on the Thursday show, and you can check that out in the top right quarter. But I said I liked Jalen Hurts. If he's going to be pretty highly owned in a very tough matchup, then maybe not as much. So what do you think is driving down the ownership for Dak?
I'll be honest with you. It's like last week when I saw Burrow around 8% and I said, I don't get it. I think this is a pass funnel matchup at home where I see him throwing 40 plus times, playing against an opponent that will probably keep up. So, I see that as sort of the game of the week to me. And again, it's the highest. I'm not sure if that or the Redskins, Commanders, Ravens game is higher, but those are the two clear standout totals. And so, the total is that just like, again, the Bengals and Ravens game had a high total. So I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. I think it's a little bit of an oversight. And if you go to wide receiver, you'll see a very similar thing with CeeDee Lamb, like we saw with Jamar Chase. He's under 10%. So you really going to give me Dak to Lamb for under 10%? Like, I'll take it, but yeah. I'm a little surprised you can get those guys at that ownership. And so that's very good chance, just like, Burrow to Chase for me last week, very good chance I'm going to have a lot of Dak to Lamb this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dallas's defense has not been good this year. So I have no doubt in my mind that Detroit's going to score points. If anything were to fail in this game, I would almost expect Dallas to do something like they did against Baltimore at home, where they fell way behind and they just cannot, they can't generate offense. They can't generate points. But my bet would be on Dallas putting up points here. And if people are going to overlook that spot, which I still wonder if ownership will change as we get closer. But man, I mean, I am just absolutely excited about that Dallas spot, 100%. So anything else in terms of ownership you want to hit?
I think those are the ones that really stand out to me was the low ownership on Dak and Lamb. I just, again, it just gives me Burrow Chase vibes from last week of why are these guys under 10%? But hey, if they're going to be under 10%, I'll play them.
So be it. So be it. Well, with that, man, let's jump in. I've already got our preferred contest for this show pulled up. We like to attack the millionaire, 1 million to first. Of course, it's a huge contest. So it's interesting with this contest. I'll just ask you this real fast because one thing I've noticed in the slant, for example, is the slant, because of the flat payout structure and just it's become popular across the industry for just how flat the payout structure is, the 2x minimum cash, just a really good payout structure. So there's a lot. I feel like it's a very sharp contest in terms of the players that are in there. Do you think that in the millionaire obviously you have a lot of people who are just maxing it out, and those are probably, you have some really sharp players doing that, but my theory is that maybe there's less of like just total, like top to bottom sharp players in the millionaire, because the millionaire, as we all know, and smart DFS players have said this for years, that's not a plus EV contest to play because, it just because of the way it's structured. And, you look at, it's $1 million to first, but if you get 10th, you're suddenly making, I'm trying to do the math. Help me out here. 997,000 less than, or something like that.
You're making so much less money. You're looking at like a seventh to eighth place versus first place, and you're, all the way down 100x. It's right. It's kind of crazy. I joke around and call the Millie Maker with guys I talk about DFS with the Ricky Bobby contest because it's first or last Ricky Bobby. And that's really what the Millie Maker is. Now, I think I would probably not be able to sleep at night if I played a Millie Maker winning lineup and didn't have it in the Millie Maker with how much DFS I've played over the years. So yeah. I play all my lineups. And again, I'm usually more of like a right around 20 lineup player. I play, all of my lineups in the Millie Maker because, again, I want to sleep at night. If I were to have the Millie Maker winning lineup and not have it in there, I would probably, cry myself to bed for a month. So I think that, I play it. I know it's not necessarily the most plus EV contest that is out there. I'm also playing a lot of the higher stakes in single entry 3-entry maxes, lower stakes to single entry 3-entry maxes too. I think those types of contests are where I've made my hay over the years. But the Millie Maker, it's the golden goose. It's the white whale, the highest finish I've ever had. And it was 6th. And, I say all the time I don't fly an OWS flag on my logo on DK. And it's not because I'm not proud of OWS. I'm very proud of OWS. It's because you fly flags from the top of mountains. And when I win the Millie Maker on that day, I will post an OWS flag in my logo. So that's my motivation. So it's a very motivating contest, a very fun contest. But if we're just going to talk math, it's not probably a plus EV contest. So it's the way it is.
It is. So with that, man, let's, where do you want to start this build?
So we're going to start with Dak, as you know, as I just touted him. I think that he's going to be my main QB this week. I will probably have a very high percentage of him like I did Burrow last week. And we're going to go ahead and put Lamb in there for the exact same reasons that we did with Chase last week. I think that they're just highly correlated. If Dak has a huge game, is Lamb having a huge game? Probably. And we're going to do a double, like we did last week. And we're going to put Ferguson in at tight end, who is, I think, supposed to be a very chalky tight end. I don't know that it will necessarily shake out that he will be as high. I think he's like 27% owned right now is his projection tight end. And maybe he will be that much. But, even if he is, that's okay. I think, playing obviously Dak and Lamb, who are supposed to be both under 10%, and just saying the game goes off and all of them have a big game, it's not going to matter that much if he's chalky, if they all explode. So we're okay with his ownership there, even if it is that high. And then we're gonna bring this back with Gibbs from Detroit.
All right.
Now, interesting thing about Gibbs here. You go ahead and click on Gibbs. I was a little surprised when I saw this and go to his game log. Look at his targets the last 2 weeks.
Wow. Yeah, 0 targets 2 straight weeks.
Yeah, how many people without looking, if you would say how many targets did Gibbs have the last 2 games, would say 0?
Definitely not me.
I wouldn't have. And so little surprised by that. And Detroit coming out of the bye week, I think they get that corrected. He's a very dynamic player out of the backfield. maybe the best in the league at that part of the game. And so to not get him involved through the air to me is a little bit negligent. And I can't see them having 2 weeks to look back on the last 2 games and be like, we didn't throw him a single screen pass. We didn't design a single play to get the ball in his hands in space. I think that changes this week. Wouldn't shock me to see him have a 7 or 8 target game. He could score on the ground and through the air type of game. So I'm pretty high on Gibbs this week. I think coming out of the bye, they get that fixed.
Absolutely, man. And you got to have someone for Detroit. And Detroit, it's hard to guess which player, but Gibbs, I forget what his highest game was last year, but with the type of player that he is, he has the ability to take a screen pass 70 yards for a touchdown. And so, if you're stacking this Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Ferguson up in multiple lineups, you can take some shots on different Detroit pieces and hopefully you hit the one that has that tournament winning score.
And go ahead and click on Gibbs again here. Just look at his game log real quick here again. Go to his game log. Look at his DK points. So even though he wasn't involved at all in the passing game the past 2 weeks, it's not as if he stunk. So this is a player that to me has some of the highest upside in all the land. If he ends up posting, a type of game where he has 7 targets for 80 yards and a touchdown, and he runs for 110 on 15 carries and another score, like he could do that. I mean, he could even do the coveted 100 receiving, rushing. I mean, it's obviously not likely, but if anyone was going to do it, he could do that, the double bonus. So yeah, I think he's a very high upside player. And if I look at ownership here for him too, he's not supposed to be super chalky. He's supposed to only be around, I think, 6%. I just checked. So when you're talking about Gibbs, Dak, and Lamb, and those 3 guys are going to all be under 10% owned, like they could easily score 100 points together. I mean, I don't want to say easily because, that's still an outlier outcome, but they could score 100 DK points together and it wouldn't be like totally flabbergasting. So, I
mean, Dak and CeeDee together could put up 70. I know that is certainly like a 90th percentile plus, but CeeDee Lamb had a couple of, I think he had at least one 40-point game last year. He might have had a 50-point game. I mean, if he's a guy who could get 18 targets if Dak throws 40 to 50 times. So, oh man, absolutely. This stack right here, it could get 100 without blinking.
Yeah, and so to get that at a very light ownership and combinationally, if they're all under 10%, how light they're going to be together, I think that's a no-brainer to me in tournaments. So that's something I'm definitely going to be doing a lot of are those 3. Now, whether or not I won't even include Ferguson on all of those 3 builds, but those 3 I'm going to have on a lot of builds.
Okay, man. I like it.
Now, let's go ahead and go to second running back, and we're going to find Robinson. And now this is assuming Robinson plays, obviously, but I think he is going to. I think he took Thursday off last week also. I think it's more maintenance related. And the reason we're playing Robinson here, and I know he'll probably be relatively popular, is that he's pretty much just missed. Oh, no, sorry, other Robinson. I should be more clearly. Falcons Robinson, not Junior.
Shoot, my bad. Yep.
Yeah, there's two Robinsons. They're both B Robinson. You got to go with the junior.
I sure do. Yeah, exactly.
But very and honestly, they're both hurt too, so you wouldn't even be able to tell that injury. But yeah, I think he's going to play. And the real thing here is he's just mispriced. I mean, he's 6.6K in an incredibly favorable matchup. Running backs have beat up Carolina all year long. He hasn't really had the big game yet. You got to think they want him to have a big game. I mean, after all the talk in the offseason about how they didn't use him right last year and, all the problems with it, you got to think they want him to just go off and be like, okay, look, we're doing the right thing with him. So I think he's a tough guy to stay away from at his price in that matchup. And so we're going to go ahead and even if he's chalk, we're just, and I don't think he's projected to be like crazy chalk. I think 26%, so pretty chalky, but we'll go ahead and we'll live with it. All right, so now we gotta save some money at wide receiver. That's where we're gonna save money on this roster and get cheap at wide receiver. And the first one we're gonna go with is Mitchell from the Colts. Now this is somewhat injury dependent because if Downs were to play, that would hurt this play. Now, it wouldn't totally rule it out because you still have Pittman who's doubtful. And so it's not as if, if Downs plays because he's going to play in the slot anyway, that Mitchell is totally useless. But if Downs sits, then, it's like, okay, we have Pierce who is priced way up because of all of his long touchdowns and who has really been a deep threat that's just hit a lot. Mitchell could kind of be in that Pittman high volume role with a little more upside because he's faster. So I think playing him at 3,900 makes a lot of sense.
We got 4K left a player here, but still got defense to plug in there.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and stay cheap at running back, and we're going to go with Polk from the Patriots.
Polk. Okay.
And I wrote this game up for the edge this week, and he played 100% of the snaps last week. So he was on the field for every single play. Looks like they're going to use him as what they drafted him to be, which was their number one wide receiver. And he's getting a new QB in the third overall pick, right? And we have to think that there's a good chance that's an upgrade. I mean, Jacoby, he's a veteran, he's a journeyman. He has stuck around in the league, but he's not a big-time quarterback. We got to hope that this is a quarterback upgrade. And if you look at the preseason, whenever, Polk and May were on the field. Yeah, Polk and May were on the field. They looked like they were going to have a connection. Like he looked like he was gonna go to him. And I think maybe something people don't factor in enough is sort of the human factor, and that they're both rookies, right? They're both relatively high picks. They probably want to be good together. Like he wants to form that connection. And so I feel like in his first game, good chance we see 8 to 10 targets. I think go to Polk. And 600, 8 to 10 targets is hard to say no. It's not a good matchup. Texans defense is tough, but we're basically just saying volume. We're going volume here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to find value somewhere. But yeah, I like where your thought process is with that. I didn't realize Polk was a high draft pick. So, shame on me for not knowing that research coming in. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I see the narrative street there as well.
Yeah, I think he was their second rounder, second or third. He wasn't below that. And so if you now go down to our defense, where we're going to save some money, right? We know we're going to almost always save money on defense in these types of rosters, and we're going to go down to the Bucs, and someone's going to be wrong between Rattler and the Bucs defense, and I'm going to say the Rattler crowd is wrong. And we're going to go with the Bucs. Now, one thing that's kind of nice about Rattler playing is that it might keep the ownership down on the Bucs, because no one's going to play Rattler and the Bucs. I mean, you're a crazy SOB if you just want to play for the defensive interception and then he storms back and it's like, okay, I mean, I get it. But, so I think we're going to go with the Bucs and hope that maybe Rattler just has a bad game and he's Rattler and it doesn't work out. And that leaves us with 6,000, right? And we're going to, yep. And there's a couple appealing options here, really. And so when I was looking over people in this range, I was like, man, I could see this, core and putting Cooper in there, putting Pollard in there. And, if I really wanted to even make a case in my mind, Bowers has the best matchup on Vegas against Pittsburgh. They get beat by tight ends all the time and are pretty good against everything else. So really I could start to make a case for a lot of different players here. But I think the one that is my favorite is Pollard. And really it came down to Pollard or Cooper for me, I think, as my 1 and 2. But he correlates slightly with Mitchell, so that's a bonus. And you're kind of predicting that the Titans are winning and they're running on the Colts, and then the Colts are trying to come back with the passing game and they're finding Mitchell. So I think this lineup overall, I was pretty happy with the way it came out. I think it has a decent amount of floor and ceiling. Usually when I'm building on here, I'm trying to build like a Millie Maker $20 lineup. I'm trying to take more risks and, I'll leave money on the table. I'll look for different spots to really be different. I could see myself playing this lineup in smaller stuff too. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I will, but I certainly could see myself doing it. I never really know how it's going to shake out on Sunday. But I feel pretty comfortable with this one.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love this one. And yeah, I'm almost certain that I will be right there with you on the heavy exposure to Dak and CeeDee. And yeah, I'll definitely be taking a hard look at Gibbs as well. So Pappy, great stuff, man. Anything else you wanna add before we ship this one out?
I mean, excited for this week. It was a good week last week. It's always more fun coming off a win than a loss, right? So you're always having more fun on weeks like this. So yeah, I'm excited to play. It's the best sweat in the world.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, thanks for joining us once again. I'm sure as you saw down below throughout the show, Big Machine is 99 now for the rest of the season, and then a 6-week pass for week 6, or a special for week 6. 1 week passes is $6. So if you want to check out what we got going on, a 1 week season, use the code 6SPECIAL and you can check it out. Pappy, thanks again, man. Good luck, and talk to you next week.
See you next week.